Sometimes setting boundaries to creativity is a very good way to explore the available options from various angles. In this episode, I want to walk you through 4 melodies that I wrote following specific instructions. The first melody had to be slow, using mainly equal note values and without any strong motive. The second one is for solo oboe, using only one motive and its variations. The third phrase had to be for solo piano, alternating between 2 different motives. And finally, we have a phrase including a short introduction. This introduction should present one motive as a fragment and lead into the main body of the phrase. Let's start with the first phrase. In this case, we wanted to write a slow motive using mostly equal note values and without any strong motive. For this phrase, I didn't want to use an orchestral texture. Instead, I started from a different direction, synthesizers. I have close to no experience in this field, but I really like some of the electronic music. In particular, I always loved those dreamy, huge ambient sounds. Therefore, I started by trying to make some usable sounds in Vital, and I ended up having 3 presets. The first one is an ambient pad. For this one, I followed a very good tutorial by a YouTuber called Outer Lives, which I will link in the description. Next, I made a bass sound, following a guide from Michael Wynn's amazing channel In The Mix, which I will also link in the description. And finally, I tried to make some sort of a lead sound without following any tutorial. Now that I had the sounds, I first came up with a very simple rhythmic pattern, which will be played over long chords. And finally, I completed the phrase by changing the notes over the same rhythmic pattern. For the second phrase, I had to invent a melody for solo oboe. In this case, I took the chance to learn something more about the instrument itself. I consulted various resources regarding the qualities and the limitations of the oboe, and I came up with a short list of guidelines that I should keep in mind while writing for this instrument. I then developed the phrase, trying to stay in the comfort range of the oboe. I started by writing a simple motive, which I developed by using close variations. The third phrase, for piano, had to use 2 motives and alternate between them. I have to admit this one took me a couple of failed attempts before having a satisfactory result. Eventually, I ended up with these motives. I tried to develop the phrase as a dialogue between the 2 motives. I decided to keep the same harmony for most of the piece. In terms of tempo, I tried to give a sense of acceleration of the pace by reducing the pauses and the repetition of notes, and I also tried to make good use of dynamics. In fact, one of the 2 motives is usually played in forte, and the other is usually played in piano or pianissimo. I tried to end the phrase with a strong punctuation by using all the tools at my disposal. There is a crescendo, the pace is quicker, and there is more variety in the harmony. Ending on the dominant also keeps the tension of the piece high and helps keeping the audience waiting for a continuation. Finally, for the last melody, I had to introduce a motive as a fragment to be followed by the main body of the phrase. As for the previous phrase, it took me more than one attempt to find 2 melodies that I liked. Eventually, I decided to use these ones. I proceeded by fragmenting the first phrase. This will be our introduction. Next, I decided to embellish and to harmonize the second phrase. Finally, I tried to alternate between the two phrases as to suggest that this section is part of a broader piece. As for the instrumentation, I wanted to use the orchestra because it allowed me to highlight the stark contrast between the two themes. For the first melody, I wanted a dark and menacing sound. Therefore, I decided to give it to the bass strings. I also knew that I wanted to highlight the light-hearted and happy mood of the second melody. To do this, I tried to understand how Beethoven orchestrated the beginning of his Pastoral Symphony. In fact, it has exactly the type of sound that I had in mind for my phrase. I noticed how Beethoven was heavily relying on violins and woodwinds, sometimes alternating between them, and sometimes combining them for local climaxes. Therefore, I tried to mimic his approach. The melody is first played by the violins, followed by a response on the woodwinds, to be completed by an enriched tutti ending of the phrase. At this point, I just had to put the pieces together and make some minor adjustments to the orchestration. And here's the final result. So which was your favorite phrase? Let me know in the comment section below. Personally, I really enjoyed the learning process this exercise has put me through. I have to admit, it's been way more challenging than the previous exercises. And I think it is because of the larger structures we are starting to work with, and also because of the specific constraints of the exercise. However, it's been a great opportunity to learn a lot. On one hand, I had the possibility to consolidate some formal concepts, such as the usage of a motive in broader phrases. On the other hand, it's also been a great opportunity to experiment with various dimensions of music, such as sound design for the first phrase, or imitating a specific orchestration style in the last one. Overall, I am quite satisfied with the result as well. Especially, I like the third phrase. Maybe one day I will try to develop it into a full piece. That's it for today. As usual, thanks for watching and see you in the next one.